I'm welcome. This is Question Time. I'm ThomasCochrane, and this is Question Time. All right. Mo from Halifax asks, with both the Education and Shadow Education Secretaries here tonight, I find it apparent to ask a question on education. What do you think is the most urgent changes that needs to be made to our education system? Starting with what's up?
Okay, thank you. I think the biggest threat to the education system and the biggest change that we need to make urgently is to oppose any kind of mechanism such as the vouchers for private schools offered to students. So this will have a detrimental effect on our state schools, and I would like to see the education system protected from these attacks from the private sector, as it were.
All right. Purple Slug, what do you think?
Well, first of all, the first major reform I'd make is a complete abolition of all free schools that are funded by the state in this country. As well as that, we need greater regulation of schools with a religious agenda in the private sector so that they follow a national curriculum. And we support the introduction of grammar schools. So there you go.
Okay, Rex, what do you have to say?
Well, the Radical Socialist Party's manifesto pledged to introduce a comprehensive bill to reform the teaching profession. So by that, we intend to ensure or to make sure that our teachers are highly qualified and are delivering the best content and education to our students. We also oppose the privatization of further and higher education. We will continue to fight against the use of market forces. We are consistently opposed to privatization in the private sector, and we believe that the state is best capable of providing for students in the areas they need most, in this case, education. Additionally, we support, improving terms of contracts for teachers and protecting their current terms. Although actually we think they are on fairly good terms, based on the reforms that our former Education Secretary Alan Bastard introduced in the previous term. So on the whole, we think that the teaching profession, education generally, is in a very strong state, but that there are more things that we can do to improve this.
Just would like to say that I said the Education Secretary was here, but he had to leave, unfortunately, and has been replaced by Purple Slug. Anyway, the Chatty Show. What do you have to say?
Well, as the Liberal Democrat manifesto set out a plan for the education system, which was fair, tolerant, and well funded. I want to carry on doing that. So some of our priorities are that we need to keep on further funding schools with SEND centres. We want to provide grants to schools with disabled access, and I want to carry on funding the pupil premium. And the Liberal Democrats will fight any attempts to underfund or take away money from the pupil premium or any school budget.
Okay. Anyone else have anything to say?
We should abolish all subsidization for further education. It's a total disgrace.
I would like to see a national education service where we can provide the skills for people to learn within the state sector provided, like the NHS, from people from cradle to grave, where people can become free to upskill themselves, to transition careers, to ensure that they are able to remain able to be a productive member of our society.
Is this an official Green policy, or is this a personal policy? Just out of interest.
This is something I will be putting forward.
Yes, but is it like an actual Green policy?
Not at present.
Okay, cool.
Okay. Anyone
If
else?
I might ask the Chatty Show a question, will the Liberal Democrats vote against any budget which would seek to decrease the pupil premium?
Yeah, it's more than likely.
It's more, and
I mean, I wouldn't be able to. Obviously, we have to look at the whole budget.
Of
you
course.
know.
Have the Liberal Democrats been approached with anything from the budget, and based on whatever they may or may not have seen, what are their current thoughts on the budget?
I'm not leader, so I don't know if James or any of the executive has been approached with anything to do with the budget. But from what I can see, we haven't actually been approached yet. But yeah, going back to the point, any budget that saw cuts to pupil premium, it is extremely likely that we'd vote against it.
Following on from that, what do you think of the prospect of a government budget passing if they haven't at this point approached the executive of the Liberal Democrats or the Labour Party, who are the parties whose votes they will need to get a budget passed?
Well, I think they probably will try and attempt to approach us or the Labour Party. You know, the government aren't stupid. But from what I know, we haven't been approached yet, and if Labour haven't been approached yet, then it's interesting. But I'm sure they will try and approach us soonish. I mean, I don't think you have. Have you had any talks with the government about the budget?
I can't imagine that they would be very interested in seeking compromise.
No, but even still.
No, to my knowledge, neither of the parties in the official opposition have been approached with respect to supporting the budget.
Are you going to create an alternative budget, as you know, oppositions have done in the past, or is that not really a priority for you?
I haven't spoken to our shadow chancellor on the particular matter because we have yet to see any evidence of a government budget. But at such a time where there is evidence of a government budget, we may consider such a step.
Abolish all budget.
Anyway, Rachel from Dewsbury asks, do you have confidence in the new Prime Minister? Starting with purpleslug.
I can't possibly comment on that, but I would say that Jacob would have been a better. No, I take that back. I take back my controversial mention.
Okay, the Chatty Show. Do you have confidence in the new Prime Minister?
Well, I think we need to see how he fares. I've seen some of the stuff in the press about the pushover PM. Sorry, I'm not entirely convinced about it. So I'm interested to see how in the coming weeks and months he actually performs as a Prime Minister, and I can make a more balanced and fair judgment then.
All right, Rex, what do you have to say?
his track record certainly isn't favourable when it comes to to his administration. He presided over an absolutely disastrous defence deal in which 800 Eurofighter Typhoons were offered to the American armed forces at a vastly discounted rate, which would have worked out to be less than the production cost, which was a mess that the following subsequent Green RSP government had to come in and clean up. And I think that the people of Britain should be very concerned to have such an incompetent administrator at the helm. Although, you know, it must be said, he's new to the job, he deserves a fair chance. Maybe he'll surprise us all, but somehow I doubt it.
Okay, what's up? What are your opinions?
Well, it's very early in his premiership, and we are yet to see anything that he has had to deal with that's large scale. In the fullness of time, we'll see exactly what the new PM is made of. But I have heard voices about a pushover PM, but I'm not in a position to make any judgments myself at the moment. I will just be opposing as we, the OOC, necessary to ensure that he does not push the boundaries of his executive.
Okay, anyone else have anything to add? No? Okay. ctrlaltlama, what do you have to say? Do you have confidence? Do you have confidence in the new Prime Minister?
I have absolute confidence in the new Prime Minister. I endorsed him during the leadership election. He is a firm and fact-based moderate who will do great things for the country. He will make the government strong and stable again and build a country that is also strong and stable. And he will pull people up by the bootstraps and make them great again.
Oh God, can I?
Wait, no, I called that first. Right, so, Mr. ctrlaltlama, I have a couple of questions for you. First of all, who in the Conservative Party didn't endorse the Prime Minister during the leadership election?
About a quarter of them. We have a fair and democratic system. We're not some sort of oligarchy where everyone has to agree. We have a democratic system, and there are winners and losers.
I don't know what you're trying to imply, but anyway, how would you comment on the...
RSP is some sort of hive mind that
but I don't think that...
And just lets the loudest voice win.
No, that's not how hive minds work, though, is it? Anyway, that brings... Oh,
There was a split, so
I yield.
a couple of
See, in order to have democracy, you have to have a difference of opinion, which the RSP can't have because it's a hive mind.
Incorrect.
well, personally, I am a huge advocate of Irish republicanism, and that was a deal breaker for me.
Can I ask Lama quickly? You said that how he's going to make the UK strong and stable again. Was that implying that Callum, your previous leader, was not a strong and stable leader?
Callum had to pick up the pieces from the previous socialist Yahoo government, and he made great strides towards fixing the country. But I believe the current Prime Minister will deliver the strong, stable foundation, will deliver an excellent budget, and we will fix the roof while the sun is shining.
I was gonna actually go back to the budget and actually say, from what I know, the Liberal Democrats haven't been approached with any budget negotiations, and it doesn't look like Labour have either. Could the government comment on are you planning to talk to us?
The government will talk to members of the opposition and secure support for a budget that will be in the best interest of everybody. We are. Well, I am absolutely sure that there will be things that the Lib Dems and certainly Labour will agree with in the coming budget, and I am very confident in our Prime Minister's ability to negotiate the necessary compromises and
I think that the key thing
sort of
here,
agreement to get the budget passed.
I think that the key thing here is that we shouldn't have a budget, and that we can't have a budget until the Seattle Seahawks win the Super Bowl.
So never is what you're
Yeah.
saying. Well, anyway, Lama, I had a question for you, which was that you claimed that the administration led by Inferno Plaso took great strides towards restoring the strength of government after the previous government. But actually, would you give us a quick summary of what the government under Inferno Plaso actually achieved with its legislative goals?
Well, it's achieved more with legislative goals than the RFP has done this term, as they have delivered 0 bills to the chamber.
That is incorrect, because the company's bill attained royal assent this term, whereas
It's not
government,
been
to my
delivered to the
knowledge,
chamber this term.
Control
It was
Llama, do you mind
already
if you
passed
don't
through the
interrupt him?
laws.
whereas to my knowledge, the government have not passed a single bill this term.
Anyway, we should move on.
Oh.
Shamnan from Bradford asks, is it acceptable for a fascist party like the NUP to hold office in this country when they speak against minorities such as myself? Moving on to Control Llama. What do you have to say?
Well, I certainly wouldn't remain in government with any fascists, and if the NUP become actively fascist or begin moving towards the old and now far dissolved Vanguard Party style systems, I would not be happy to continue in the cabinet. Record. They are certainly right wing on social issues, but I would not describe them as fascist. They seem to believe in a democratic system and are quite happy to engage in coalitions rather than use military brute force to gain their governments. So I don't think they are fascists. I do find some of the comments made towards minorities a bit distasteful. My advice to the questioner as for securing his minority rights is to vote for the Conservative Party so that we can govern with fewer parties in coalition.
Okay, the Chatty Show. What are your opinions?
Well, no, it's not acceptable for a fascist party like the NUP to hold office, because everybody knows that the Liberal Democrats actually are the true fascist party, because we want to, hinder the will of the people, and it's unacceptable for fake fascists like the NUP to jokes aside though, I don't think it's acceptable for the NUP who has held such right-wing views and such wrong views. I mean, you've seen the Prime Minister even called them out, well, the former Prime Minister called them out in MQs, so I don't think that they should be allowed to have the power. And hang on, hold up, it's not time to talk. That comes later. More.
Anyway, Rex, what do you have to say?
Now, you see, I don't, I think that there are semantic defences from some parties that the NUP may technically not be fascist, they may technically be fascist. I don't think that's relevant, because, frankly, it is disgraceful that the governing coalition would allow such right-wing extremism to go ahead under their watch. And, frankly, the previous Prime Minister, despite his condemnation, and the current Prime Minister are guilty of condoning such behaviour by allowing it to occur in their government. So, frankly, I don't buy the argument that even this is just an issue of the NUP. It's an issue that infects and rots the whole government from within, that they are incapable of being tough on right-wing extremism.
Okay, what's up? What do you have to say?
Well, the current government has presided over a chasm of chaos with regards to fascism within its own government ranks, within the actual coalition within the government.
Coalition of chaos.
It's not, no, it's a chasm of chaos, because it's so deep within the government, so deep rooted that there's no finding the end of it. The people within the Tory party themselves that have expressed fascist views, just to name one of them.
No longer a member.
And it took it took a motion from the opposition, the official opposition, in order to highlight and to try and bring an end, as far as we can try the best we can, to stop this this fascism. We put a motion forward in the House, and we are working with the RSP, who are official opposition partners, with Colossal, who is the director of communication for the official opposition, to ensure that this actual chasm that is deep rooted within the government at the moment is put to bed, because we cannot have the tolerant society that we wish to live in degraded by this horrible nastiness within our own parliament. The place where the people are represented should not be a place where the nastiness comes out and people are...
Anyway, purpleslug, what do you have to say?
Well, I think that the true authoritarianism and fascism is my moderation style, and that that's what people need to be most worried about, and that I will deliver strong and stable leadership that is not in the simulation's interest, but I will do so anyway, and that in comparison, the NUP are weak and left-wing in comparison to my tendencies to ban anybody who I like.
Anyway, moving on.
Well, I really must insist that I get a chance to reply to some of those comments.
Okay, go ahead.
Because, so firstly, we have a member of the Green Party implying that some views held by people who have voted in the democratic election are too horrendous to be represented in a democratic system. Now, this sounds to me like the Greens are approaching levels of thought policing that I never thought I'd see outside of the Eastern Bloc. And I find this absolutely abhorrent that a member of the Green Party would suggest that someone's views should not be represented in a democratic manner, such as the House of Commons. Moving on, Rex, I think you are entirely misunderstood when you're suggesting this government has brought forth right-wing extremism. First, you insist this government hasn't done anything. Then you insist we've brought right-wing extremism upon people. What is it? Have we not done anything, or have we brought right-wing extremism?
What has the government done?
We need to move on.
If I may,
you really are misinterpreting everything this government stands for. You're completely shaming your whole party with these comments, because the Conservative Party is acting as a moderating force on the NUP, and we have done a great success of that.
Anyway, we should move on. Stefan from Wakefield asks, do we need further restriction on immigration? Starting with Rex.
You know, my party and in general the coalitions that we have stood in alignment with have been broadly supportive of free movement, and I think that it is important to recognise that on the whole there are significant economic benefits to free movement. But there is a better case to be made for free movement. It is the case that it is a fundamental liberty and fundamental right enjoyed by the people of this country at the moment, that with many countries they are free to go and come and go as they please. Now, there are of course downsides. There are of course, you know, influxes in particular areas, particularly with seasonal employment, which is not necessarily always accounted for well by public spending. And so my party has consistently supported the establishment of a regional migration mitigation fund to mitigate the effects of migration, especially in terms of short-term imbalances in expenditure and compared to demand. So from that front, I think it is important that we account for higher migration and for free movement, but at the same time, there are downsides. They can be accounted for without knee-jerk increasing restrictions on free movement of people.
Okay, the Chatty Show. What are your opinions?
No, we don't. Thank you very much.
Okay. What's up? What do you have to say?
I say this. I say that immigration does not need to be restricted. Immigration needs to happen because without it, we are poorer, less diverse, and our services desperately need foreign blood in order to thrive. Because when you visit public institutions, you visit people that are from a diverse range of cultures, people that have come here on their own merit, people that are here to work hard and honestly do a good job. You don't see people queuing for the job seekers allowance or universal credit. You don't see people unemployed if they're no.
Okay. Purple Slug, what do you have to say?
Well, on a serious note, I introduced Commonwealth Freedom of Movement motion as Home Secretary, which was intended to increase immigration and emigration rates between rich Commonwealth countries. I'm generally in favour of freedom of movement. I think it's economically beneficial. Of course, there should be controls on immigration, but we're not in favour of a hard cap.
Okay, ctrlaltlama, what do you have to say?
Well, I do believe in the benefits of the single market and migration, but I find it quite sickening that Rex insists that his party has been trying to introduce a migration mitigation fund for a long time. My question to Rex is, why haven't you done that? Why haven't you introduced a migration mitigation
My
fund?
exact words were, we consistently supported.
Yes, but why, if you've consistently supported it, why didn't you introduce it when you were in power? And furthermore, the reason you're not introducing it is because you're not the party of the poor. You're quite happy to let the poor bear the burdens of the negative effects of large mass migration, so that the rich and the bourgeois can continue to have their cheap maids, their cheap plumbers, their cheap waiters, and their cheap
Bourgeois
nannies.
crowd.
And yet you say that, but it's consistently been the left that have defended basic income, have defended the programs that benefit the poorest in society at the expense of the wealthiest, the most able to support and contribute.
How does basic income benefit the poorest in society to pay the richest in society a substantial amounts of money just for existing? And also,
you clearly haven't grasped the mechanism that basic income actually works
I know
by.
it's a taper scheme, but there is no reason that people earning substantial amounts of money should still be receiving payments. And while we're still on the topic of migration,
there is a very good reason. It's
while we're still on
to
the
ensure
topic of
the reason that the taper works the way it does is because otherwise
the question wasn't about LBI.
Disincentive to earning above the cut.
Yeah, but you did, to be fair, you did actually mention it.
The question wasn't about BI. While we're still on the topic of migration, the Greens talking about needing foreign blood, needing different types of blood. Sorry, have I stepped back to apartheid South Africa? Are we so obsessed with the need for people depending on their genetics that we're going to intend specific groups of people that we like? I don't think so. I don't think that's what I've stepped back into. And I think
Britain is open. Britain is open to anybody who wants to come here and work hard. And
the Greens are just stuck in 1940s era thinking. I don't see why we need migrants to run the NHS. Maybe we need some, but I don't see why you insist that
I'll be here
need.
to advocate.
I noted it down here. You said need foreign blood. So what's better about foreign blood?
Okay, what we need is people to come here to work in this country from abroad, because we don't have the skilled people to do the jobs. Well, that's your job as the government to ensure that the education system does that.
Why didn't you train them then?
I was not party to that because I have recently joined the House. But
And if you insist on training up the domestic workforce instead of because you insist that we need migrants because they're not trained, then why do you support any and all efforts to delay the government's reforms to education to ensure that people who are skilled can specialise in the skills they are proficient at an earlier age and can be set on tracks to ensure that people, no matter their income or their background or their orientation, can go on to higher education and specialise in academic or technical skills instead of muddling through the current system where everyone is having a mishmash average education of all sources despite their interests or the skills, and it simply comes down to background whether you or not you get into university.
Okay, moving on. Margaret from Bright House asks, asks, with the recent political chaos in Northern Ireland, who do you think was at fault for the breakdown of the executive? Rex, what do you have to say?
So, naturally, the reasons for the breakdown of the executive have to be borne equally by all sides and all parties to Stormont, and it should be noted that, there was conflict on all sides, and as I said, all sides must bear some share of the burden, but frankly, that isn't the main issue here. The main issue here is that after the breakdown, the negotiations that both parties entered into were not carried out in good faith. Solidarity recognised that what they had done had led to conflict and took steps to resolve that. They offered an excellent deal to the unionists. And what happened? They rejected it. Why? Because their poll numbers look good. They thought that if they rejected the deal and forced an election, they would do well from it. It was a shameless and cynical move, and it is utterly unacceptable and dangerous to the peace process.
Okay, the Chatty Show. What do you think?
Well, I'm not a massive expert on Northern Irish politics and haven't really been following the situation as closely because I've been trying to take a step back from the fun of MHOC. But I'd agree with Rex to, for what I've seen, the blame does need to be, put on both sides. But I'd say more towards the side of, Keelan. From what I've seen, it seems that he's, more at fault here. Yeah.
Okay, what's up? What do you have to say?
I don't profess to be an expert on Northern Ireland. I don't profess to know the ins and outs. I have not followed this as closely as I perhaps should have. However, I would like to see some kind of coming together for the common good in Northern Ireland.
Okay, purpleslug. What's your opinion on the situation in Northern Ireland?
Well, of course, the destabilisation of the Northern Ireland executive was very regrettable. I'm not too sure about why it happened, but I would say that it's important that a new executive forms soon without an election happening.
Okay, ctrlaltlama. What do you have to say?
Well, I disagree with the premise that Keelan D was primarily at fault. The reason the UUP pulled out of the agreement is because the right of Ulster Scots people in the Good Friday Agreement to practice their language and have it legally accessible to them on road signs and other services had been denied because that bill had been voted down. A petition of concern was then attempted, which is the correct procedure for such an event like this. And then due to changes made to the petition of concern, and the entire Republican voting bloc voted against it, ending the petition of concern, which is entirely contrary to the system of cohesion and cooperation intended for Stormont. This resulted in a deadlock situation where the Unionists knew their rights under the Good Friday Agreement were going to be trampled over while the Republicans continued on with the Irish Language Act. And quite frankly, shameful the way the Solidarity has acted throughout this. Continuing to push rights for the Republicans and not recognise the equal rights of the Unionists resulted in a situation where the deputy had to resign from their position and force some sort of agreement to be made, which luckily was eventually reached, as no one from either side of this wanted an early election. And I must point out, because people are skipping over this, that Solidarity at one point walked out of the talks and refused to continue. So while both sides share blame, I would rest the majority of it on the Republican side.
You know what? ctrlaltlama, I'm not going to disagree with you. I don't believe that Keelan was predominantly responsible for the breakdown in the initial breakdown of the executive. I believe that it was truly an issue that spans parties and communities, and I think that it is a testament to the willingness of the unionists who are in the majority to negotiate that a deal was achieved. But I also disagree on some aspects. I think that, first of all, clearly the petition of concern is not being used as it is outlined in the Good Friday Agreement, because it's designed in such a way that it requires support from both sides of both the nationalist and the unionist communities in order for something designated by a petition of concern to pass. And clearly that isn't the case, or it wouldn't have passed. But I think further than that, Solidarity, I don't know that they walked away from the talks, but if it's true that they did, they came back to the talks, and they came back to the talks without the intense political pressure that the Ulster Unionists came back to the table under. They rejected a deal which was essentially everything they had asked for, and then under pressure from the press, when this was revealed, they only then went back and accepted a deal on similar terms. And I think that, it's pointless and destructive and counterproductive to try and nitpick out the exact reasons and to decide exactly who's at fault for the initial breakdown in the executive. But it is important to recognise that the Ulster Unionists were essentially politicking and rejecting that deal because they thought that they could get more, or they thought they could get more from an election. It is disgraceful.
I reject the idea that the Ulster Unionists were just simply politicking. I believe firmly that they were trying to defend the rights of the minority community in their actions recently. I do insist to confirm to you that Solidarity did walk away from the talks at one point and had to be brought back under pressure from the Northern Ireland Secretary after he confirmed an election would not be held until the 7-day talks. Well, I'll wrap it up because I'm being told to.
Okay, moving on. Sorry. Does anyone have anything else to say? Anyone?
A voice in my ear is telling us to move on, so...
Yeah. Okay. Nakiri from Huddersfield asks, with the recently introduced motion to call for a universal conference on nuclear disarmament, what are your views on the Trident nuclear system?
Good.
Starting with the Chattyshow.
Well, the policy, our leader, James has, made it quite clear his views on nuclear weapons. You'd be having to live under a rock to not really have an idea of what he believes in, and we follow that ideology that we do believe that we should have the goal of not renewing Trident, but at the same time we do think that we should have some form of nuclear deterrent. Well, I don't know the exact specifics of it yet. I'm not an expert in this area, but concerning the motion itself, we don't really support it. It was not very well thought out or well written motion by Labour, so that would what we would have to say about the motion itself and about Trident. So, yeah, done.
So, sorry if I'm allowed in there to state the government's view on this. We do believe in the renewal of the Trident nuclear system to prevent any other nuclear nation performing the act of nuclear blackmail, where they threaten the nation to perform a task or deliver something under the threat of nukes.
If I might interject, can you name any prior cases of nuclear blackmail that have taken place?
No, I cannot name any cases of that.
So, in that case, would it be fair to say
That
that the
happened
suggestion that
to
nuclear
the
blackmail
UK?
might occur is simply
I-
scaremongering by the government?
I can name a case where it has happened to Libya, where Libya was building up a nuclear arsenal under Colonel Muammar Gaddafi, and threatened Chad with use of these nuclear weapons if they did not hand over a portion of land. Now, this never came to a head, and no one is ever sure whether Gaddafi had completed the nuclear weapons at this point, although we did find nuclear equipment after he was removed from power, but the UN did. But this never came to a head because France, another nuclear nation, stepped in and took Chad's side. So nuclear blackmail is certainly a thing that has happened in the past. There's also the case where in the Falklands Island invasion, where Argentina threatened to use its nukes on us, and we had to put pressure on them to prevent them from using our own nuclear weapons. While not used recently against the UK, there has certainly been cases of nuclear blackmail where our own or our allies' nuclear weapons have prevented further problems from occurring.
Okay, what's up? What do you have to say?
Nuclear weapons do not have a place in our society. I believe that we should be campaigning for unilateral disarmament, and that we should be looking for a softer, gentler kind of foreign outlook. We should be stopping conflict before it happens. The only people it actually benefits are those that make the weapons and those that seek to destroy other people. It does not benefit the population at large. It does not benefit anybody else.
May I interject?
Oh yeah, go ahead.
Okay, I fully support the Trident nuclear deterrent system because whilst we have individuals like Jazz 1066 on the loose, we must have a nuclear deterrent in order to stop from a dangerous and radical agenda.
Anyone else have anything to say?
I just wanted to ask Lama what his source was for the the Argentina having nuclear weapons during the Falklands conflict, because that's not an account that or a version of history that I've ever heard before.
This information was declassified under the 50-year rule and is available to read in a issue of The Guardian if you do a quick Google search about it. The nuclear weapons that Argentina had acquired were sold to them from France, and they were not the only South American nation at the time to be pursuing nuclear weapons, but like South Africa and a few other democratic nations in the developing world, they have opted to move away from attempting to gain nuclear weapons and move into the US nuclear umbrella.
Anyone else going to add anything? No?
We should give
That seems like it's it.
we should give Twisted Nuke the code and see what happens.
That is, I think, an exceptionally bad idea. I think that is an exceptionally bad idea that purpleslug, the honourable noble lord, should know better than to suggest. Clearly, he is incapable of providing the strong and stable leadership that this country dearly needs.
Vonk.
Anyway, I think that we're done here. Thanks for watching and good night.
Bye bye.